I'm excited to present our next panel, Navigating Entrepreneurship and Innovation in the Cell Ag Industry. We have our moderator, Avery, who's at the UC Berkeley Haas School of Business, and he will be introducing our panelists. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go ahead, Avery.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jasmine. The goal of this panel is really to give you all in the audience, aspiring entrepreneurs, a sense of what it's like to manage and lead at startups in the cell ag industry. And we have panelists that I'm about to introduce at early stage brands navigating that 0 to 1 stage, as well as panelists from later stage startups that can share what it's like driving innovation at larger brands. So first, some introductions, and then we'll dive into questions. So we have Dr. Jess Krieger, who is the CEO and co-founder of Ohayo Valley, a cultivated steak company. She is one of the cultivated meat industry's earliest pioneers and was the first scientist in the world to build a career exclusively in cultivated meat science in 2010. In 2019, she co-founded Artemis Foods as chief science officer and developed the Artemis Burger, a cultivated beef burger. In 2020, Dr. Krieger co-founded Ohayo Valley to develop the world's first cultivated Wagyu ribeye. She is also the founder of the Women of Cellular Agriculture organization, which supports women in STEM pursuing careers in cell ag and cultivated meat. And she has undergraduate degrees in neuroscience and a PhD in biomedical sciences. Hopefully I covered everything there. We got Angela Braren, who is the head of new ventures at Perfect Day, a consumer biology company on a mission to create a kinder, greener tomorrow by developing new ways to make the foods you love, starting in the dairy aisle. In her role, which we'll dive into, she leads a global team on the research and development, scale up and commercialization of novel new venture proteins and sustainability initiatives. Angela received her bachelor's in human ecology from the College of the Atlantic and a Master of Arts in critical theory from California College of the Arts. We have Max Rye, who's the chief strategist at Turtle Tree. Max focuses on leading the team at through Turtle Tree's journey of transforming the global food industry. Max has more than 15 years of experience helping businesses scale with technology. As the former CEO of a Silicon Valley tech company, he firmly believes that the world's biggest problems can be solved with technology. And at Turtle Tree, Max formulates business strategies and shapes the company's direction, essential to accelerating its growth and market presence. And finally, we have Dr. Eric Schulze, he's the VP of Product and Regulation at Upside Foods, a cultivated meat, poultry, and seafood company. At Upside, he leads both design and development of the company's meat products, as well as its regulatory policy and government affairs. Eric is a professional molecular biologist, genetic engineer, and former federal biotechnology regulator. Prior to Upside, he served as the U.S. Food and Drug Administration regulator, where he worked on novel food and drug biotechnology products. He holds a doctorate in genetic, cellular, and molecular biology with a specialty in embryonic stem cell engineering. And I'm Avery. I'll be moderating the panel, and I'm, I guess, woefully unqualified in comparison to our panelists, but I'm getting my MBA at Berkeley and have worked in the food startup space for the last 7 years. And I have a bachelor in art history for those less technical in the room. So you can still break into the industry without having a technical background. So with that, would love to dive into the questions. So this is for everyone, but let's start with Jess. If you could, please just walk us through kind of a typical week in the life.
Probably 1,000 meetings. But lots of conversations with employees, investors, talking about the science, figuring out what we're going to do for different projects, working on branding. We are an early stage startup, so there's a lot to do every day.
Awesome. Let's kick it to Max, and then Angela and Eric. Let's save your answers for. I have a particular question for you about a week in the life. So let's just go to Max for this one, and then we'll head over to the next question.
I think very similar to Jess in many ways. A lot of meetings, meeting with investors, meeting with team members, and also trying to build relationships in the industry, in the traditional food industry as well, trying to understand what consumers are looking for, trying to figure out the best strategies and the best partnerships. This takes so much time. And of course, we do travel quite a bit, being a Singapore headquartered company and having our R&D headquarters in California, in Davis, as a matter of fact. So working quite a bit across multiple different geographic locations.
Awesome. Many in this room are weighing their post-grad options, maybe between starting a company, joining an early stage venture, or joining a more mature startup. How would you suggest to graduating students? How would you suggest that they evaluate this decision? And if joining an existing startup, what are the characteristics you'd look for in an ideal firm or role? And why don't we kick it to Angela?
Great, thanks, Avery. Well, little context, my background is in entrepreneurship, and I'm an intrapreneur at Perfect Day. So that's the context I'm using to answer this question. I think it's a really exciting but also scary moment when you're trying to weigh your options and figure out what path you're going to take, whether it's to stay within academia, start your own company, join a venture, join something really small, join something more mature. And I think you can think about this question. It was always helpful for me to think about it in relation to the intersection of three things. So the first one for me always is, what am I most curious about? So what are you most curious about? What are the activities that you love to do when you actually zoom in and look at your day? So if you took any day in the life, how do you spend your hours? What kinds of activities do you like spending your time on? What kinds of activities don't you like spending your time on? It could be really helpful to make a list of those, and that'll help guide you to understanding, I'm a bigger picture thinker. I like bigger meta questions, or actually maybe I love fiddling with models. I love working in the details. So that's one of the avenues in this intersection. The second, I think, is, what problems do you experience? Like, what problems really get under your skin? What problems really piss you off? What kinds of problems are you thinking about? And when I'm talking about problems, I mean like global or local problems that you think are worth solving. And then third, is there anyone out there currently working on the problem? So if there's that problem that really pisses you off, if you know that there's a company that's already working on it, or maybe you heard through your social network that there's someone who's also interested in that, that could be an interesting person to speak with, or an interesting group of people to think about talking to. And so when you think about that intersection of what are you most curious about, how do you like to spend your time, what problems are you thinking about in your day-to-day, and is there anyone currently working on that problem, that can help you think not, oh, what degrees do I have and what am I cut out to work on, but what am I excited to build in the future, and who can I build those with?
Yeah, and I'll just add to Angela's really good answer and Max and Jess's. Briefly, acknowledging that literally no one knows what they're doing. I think that's like the most important thing, is that we all are driven by a sense of our own honest ignorance about the world around us, and then satiating that ignorance by actually going and solving a problem around it. Learning, I think part of it, I'm driven by trying to learn more about what I don't know. And I think that people need to realize you can get paid to do that. So simply acknowledging literally no one knows what they're doing. And that's a good, healthy attitude to walk in and just realize you can also become an expert at whatever you choose, acknowledging that it's okay to not know things, and being driven by a healthy amount of curiosity.
Awesome. Well said. Curious. I love also that, Angela, what you mentioned about the intersection of sort of what you're curious about and the problems that you want to solve. For anyone on the panel, that aside, like, are there any sort of feasibility or viability signals that you look for in companies in this space? Like, so much of the space is kind of a black box. A lot of products are yet to hit the market. Anything that you look for in a company to suss out, like, they have, long-term potential?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here is, are they solving a worthwhile problem? So are they building technology for technology's sake, or are they solving a problem that exists in our economy, in our market? And if solved, would it be a 10x better solution than what we're dealing with today? Would people actually pay money for it? That's the first thing I look for.
I'll add to this, and I wonder what Jess and Max think here. I look at less of even the problem and the team of people. Like Jess is in this early stage, and you spend a disproportionate amount of your time in a company trying to build a team. Investors don't invest in ideas, they invest in people. They need, because it's all future focused. It doesn't exist. People will tell you it can't happen. I've heard this a million times, and I'm sure everyone else has, but I will tell you, people will invest in you if they believe the team can solve a problem. And I don't know. I wonder what Jess thinks about that.
I actually agree with you, Eric, there as well. The team is incredibly one of the biggest things, because you're right. This whole industry is still evolving. It's still so early stage. And I think if you bring in the absolute best people around the world together, they will help to continue to refine these ideas, to help find solutions, and help to build a real strong commercial path as well as you move forward.
I agree. And I think trying to understand the values of the founders, the values of the team and the company, and trying to understand what the culture is going to be like is just as important to your happiness and your progress as the science you'll be doing.
Awesome. Kind of a follow-up actually along those lines for Jess and Max. Who have been your most impactful hires in your entrepreneurship journey? And where do you think students can plug in and add value to a young startup in this space?
Oh boy, I have to jump in and say that for us, it's been our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Aletta. She's probably one of the best folks in this industry, coming from Merck previously, from their cultivated meat division. But she's added so much value to the team, so much direction. But it's really, we have so many amazing all-stars, and it's hard for me to say this, but there's a lot of amazing people, but Aletta has just made a world of a difference.
So I have two companies to think about. Actually, we've had so many amazing hires at both. It's the values of those hires, the curiosity, the passion for the mission, and the drive that they have that make them an excellent team member and really push the company forward.
Awesome. Shifting gears a little bit. This is for Jess, and I think maybe Eric as well, but possibly not. You tell me, Eric. How has your transition been from academic research to entrepreneurship?
It was a huge transition, in some ways shocking. There's a very different communication style in academia where complex topics can be explained in depth. And when I first started talking to investors and other founders in the cellular agriculture space, I was approaching this from the standpoint of an expert scientist. And I soon realized that was not a successful communication strategy to get my point across. And I had to adjust not only my style of communication and the types of communication I presented, but also the goals for that communication as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Like, you invert your communication style. Obviously came from academia as well. I worked for the U.S. government. I've worked in all the holy triad of areas you can work as a professional scientist, and every area requires a bit different communication. But academia is all the nuance and then maybe a point. But that's because you're traipsing through the mind of someone who wants to understand, and that's a very different communication style. Here, it's the opposite. It's what's the point, and then if I want to know more, you can provide it. And it's much more purposeful communication. And then government communication is halfway between completely inefficient and wonderfully efficient, depending on who you're working with. I say that as someone who loved being in the government. So I'll leave it there so that I don't get my former colleagues in trouble.
Cool. I won't press on you there. how about for Angela and also Eric, at Upside and at Perfect Day, can you walk us through the various stages of product development for a new venture in a bigger organization like the ones that you are in? R&D, scale up, commercialization, regulation. Talk us through how you decide to allocate resources and what key players are in the room as far as like the roles of various your colleagues that are making these decisions with alongside you.
Yeah, Angela, you want to go? You're on market.
Sure. Yeah. So little context, Perfect Day, founded in 2014. And now we're about over 250 team members, with products in the market. So the way that we think about new ventures or the kind of new products we want to bring to market, we first start with our chief product and strategy officer and the founders. And so they're having a ton of conversations with people all around the space. And they're always brewing on ideas for our latest products. When they feel pretty confident that they like the way something fits into our business model, a new target fits into our business model, they'll share it with me and they'll say, what do you think about the business opportunity? Can you help us understand market size and the potential demand and trends in the space? And can you create a proof of concept? So I'll do a really quick and dirty like market analysis, which is just trying to, tell the story of the things I just mentioned. What does the market look like? How is it going to change? What's the story we can tell around the demand for this product? Who are our buyers? What are our price points? High level, because this is just the beginning. And if that kind of passes muster, then we'll actually go to one of our R&D teams to create a proof of concept. And this is just like, can we even make the thing? A lot of our targets are very challenging or, totally new to the world. So we're unsure if we can actually do it. But we'll assemble that team. These are usually director level folks in R&D to create a strategy, create that proof of concept. And of course, that takes time. We're talking about biotech, so these are longer proof of concept timeframes. But if we can do it and we can make it, then the next big question is, are we delivering the quality that we want? Is this having the function that we desire? Are we meeting, are we checking all the boxes that we need to with this particular ingredient in the case of Perfect Day? So we'll work with our regulatory team on a lot of those questions, but a lot of that is troubleshooting within R&D. And that also means scaling it up. So if we're getting good, high quality product, we'll go from just working on the bench in shake flask or 1 liter scale fermenters in the case of our precision fermentation to pilot scale, could be 100 liters up to 5,000-ish. And then we'll move on to commercial. A lot of work just trying to get quality to be A+ as we scale. That means also working with tech transfer to any manufacturing sites. And again, regulatory is supporting us through all of this. And then actually getting to the commercialization part, which is super exciting. It's the part when we get to finally start talking to customers to see if they will actually pay us money for the thing, right? The thing that we've invented, our target. And that's the greatest validation we could ever have. So I can make tons of PowerPoint presentations on what I think is going to happen in terms of market size, price point, trends, but really rubber hits the road when we get in conversations with prospective customers and they say, yeah, we'll pay you money for this. And here's how we're thinking about this opportunity. And so we'll land those initial customers and then pass that off to start scaling that side of the business.
I don't have a lot to add with minor variations. I think that last point, Angela said it very well, which is, will people pay us for this? Is really sort of the goal. And with cultivated meat, obviously that is what we believe. For Upside Foods, we're just the cutting to the chase and practicing this corporate VC speak style is we believe that we can compete on market at or above the quality of conventional meat products. And we want people to buy our products because they are delicious and good and fit into their lives. And we think that we can win on that alone. And of course, on top of it, the climate reasons only add to that. And I think there's a million reasons for eating things like cultivated meat, poultry, or seafood. But we simply want to provide a product, to Angela's point, that people actually want to eat and pay us money for. And that at the end of the day also moves us forward into a more sustainable world.
Awesome. Well said. A little bit of a follow-up there, inspired by a question from the chat. You're all on different sort of places along the startup life cycle continuum. When did roles open up for, or have they, for the less technical, more commercialization side? Obviously, Perfect Day is the only brand in market at the moment, but Eric, I'm curious, at Upside, what's the makeup of the team, commercial versus food science and manufacturing? And for Max and Jess, maybe you could speak to like your future hiring vision for this year and the following year, and when you're going to start adding more of the less technical people onto the team.
I'll be brief because I want to hear from everyone else, actually. We can roughly divide things into thirds, from cells, growing lots of cells and tissues, and making food. Those are the three divisions, basically. And you can roughly divide our staff into thirds there. With the bulk will eventually be the production staff at commercial scale facilities, which we're currently working through right now. And we just launched our first production facility here in California. We currently have about 2/3 of our staff are not sort of the R&D heavy scientists that have to come in. So in the future, it's going to be predominantly non-sort of technical R&D hires. So shamelessly look out for job applications, and we have lots and lots of hiring to do. So we'll be looking. Anyway, super curious what the other panelists think.
Well, we've been really fortunate. We have an amazing chief people officer, and we have a little over 40 folks between Singapore and the U.S. But we're hiring nonstop. I think the roles continue to evolve and open up. But there's quite a few new positions that continue to open up as we continue to get through the next phase and closer and closer towards commercialization. Right now, we're a little bit more than half R&D, but we actually have a very strong business team as well. And for us, we've done a lot of insight studies earlier on, trying to understand the consumers and potential consumers. As we look at product development, we kind of do that in parallel. So we do have a lot of business folks as well as an amazing R&D team.
At Ohio Valley, we're mainly focused on research for these next 2 years, developing our products and working on various aspects of the technology. After our Series A, which is going to be in 2023, we'll be hiring a lot of non-technical roles.
Yeah, I'll just round this out with saying it's a little bit more fuzzy, I think, for me. It's been 8 years of Perfect Day. In the very beginning, we did start out with strong sales, really, and marketing from an early stage. Now it's been 8 years. So, of course, those functions have grown enormously. I imagine that's the next stage for Eric as well. So I think that each company has a different take on this, is what I've learned through having conversations. But it seems that there are opportunities beyond R&D, even at the early stage, at least in the examples I've seen, though there's a little bit of diversity there.
Gotcha. And I actually have a follow-up for you, Angela. You have a less technical background in this space, but you are deeply in this space. How has that been navigating the industry from that perspective? And any advice to students in the audience that aren't food scientists or aren't as technical as some of the other panelists, but still looking to break into the space? And maybe Max as well, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, if you could think back to a time when you were less technical, coming from the Silicon Valley tech scene into this world, what was it like, that learning curve, and any advice you can share with people that are earlier in their journey in cell ag?
Yeah, sure. And I think this is a really good question, because Today, we're talking about cell ag, and there are a lot of really big problems here. So it will take a diverse range and group of people to solve those problems. But for me, my background is, and you mentioned it, Avery, a bit, undergraduate degrees in human ecology. That's a multidisciplinary approach to problem solving, more or less. Graduate degree in critical theory. That's like philosophy, Lacan, Derrida, Foucault. So very much this is a non-traditional background for someone you would imagine in the role of head of new ventures at Perfect Day. But I'm also an entrepreneur, and my thing throughout my life, I realized, is that I carve out new paths. That's like this muscle that I have that I tend to do, I guess an attribute of mine. So my thing is that I make value out of nothing. Like that's kind of how I see the world and what I like to do. So before Perfect Day, I built a software company and I coded the first version myself. I knew nothing about computer science, but I just was so interested and curious about it that that I had the passion, right, and the ability to spend hours on doing that. And I know a lot of us in this on this panel and in this room are the same way, very curious people. I'm also a science fangirl, so I don't have a science background, but I read a lot about proteins and genetic engineering just in my own spare time for fun. And so that's interesting to note if anyone has that kind of interest where they find they're doing something kind of different, nerdy for fun. That usually means that you can retain a lot of that information that maybe others wouldn't normally. And I think that's a really great space to be in for me, which is the intersection of entrepreneurship and science. Crazy about science, good at entrepreneurship. And so my background is well situated for that. Though if you were to look at my resume, you'd say, what is someone with a degree in human ecology and critical theory doing in a very technical space? But if I'm thinking about helping others break into the space and how to think about it, and Avery is such a cool example that you have a degree in art history, what I would say is there are kind of two ways to look at it. I have, I think, an entrepreneurial answer, like what worked for me. Then I also have another answer that I think will also help. So the first entrepreneurial answer is if you want to break into the space, one way to do it is to, as Eric mentioned earlier, get really curious, like super curious, like weird curious. So read the books that you want to read and listen to the podcasts that you want to listen to, and just do you, because by truly doing you, you're going to, one, have work that you love, of course. And not only that, but the work that you produce is going to be world-class because you love it. And two, you're going to be so different, so unique that you will probably.
Oh.
And then this world-class work and expertise can really lead you to your personal competitive moat as an individual in the economy. And so that's why a company is going to want to hire you, because you have something that no one else has, that uniqueness. And if you follow your curiosity, it leads you beyond cell agriculture, well, that's good too, because it turns out that you like something more, and you should find that. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is just, I gave you the curiosity entrepreneurial answer, which worked for me, but also if you are curious about a lot of things, or you're not really sure exactly what you're curious about, then find the people who are working on things that you think are cool and join them, because those other people could be starting a new company. They could be building a company that's already scaling. I think the sweet spot, if you want to join a group of people who are working on something cool, is around Series A financing, I think, and you'll have a lot of return there, and you'll get to work on a lot of cool things. You'll have a lot of leverage, but make sure you're working with amazing people. And that's how you'll learn how to run a company well. And you'll probably meet people there that you'll either start a company with in the future, or you will find out that you end up working with them at a new company in the future.
Awesome, thank you.
Liz, and I think Angela said it really, really well. My background is in engineering and nothing to do with food tech or even the biospace. However, when I exited my previous company, I knew that I wanted to become much more deeply involved in sustainability, because I've been whining about it for like a decade, but I thought, okay, I want to do something about it. That was the first step. And from that point, when I knew what I wanted to do, I actually went through an educational process myself to educate myself, did a few courses, and was fortunate enough to meet a co-founder that was just really amazing, and was able to jump in. But there's no other way of doing this but jumping right in. I'm also a big believer in being able to reinvent yourself. Everybody has that ability. If you really want to get involved in an industry or making a difference, you're not too old, you're not too young, you can actually do this. You just got to put your time into this whole thing. So I think this is and Angela said everything else really brilliantly. I think all these folks who think, hey, listen, I'm either in engineering or even arts and so forth, they have a lot more to contribute to this industry than they realize. There is so much that they can do, and they may become vital for this entire industry to succeed. So I think everybody has a role to play in this industry.
For sure. Two follow-up questions, one from the chat and one from me. Getting a lot of upvotes on a question about undergraduate opportunities for internship in scientific roles, but also let's include non-scientific as well. That's part one. And then part two, if you want to, while you're on air, do both. Just curious, Angela, you mentioned like finding podcasts and articles and whatnot. Where are sort of the sources of where you're getting your knowledge from that you would recommend, whether it's a newsletter or a podcast? So jobs and opportunities and sources of information for the industry at large.
I could take a stab at that. In terms of information, where I get knowledge and information, it's all over the place. Like, I just really got into this book this week, which is all about ethnobotany, which now I'm like super interested in. But it's a creative nonfiction, I think, work that is really inspiring me. But I've also just tried to figure out where are the labs, who are the labs that are doing the most cutting edge work, and do they have podcasts? Some of them do, actually, which is pretty cool. As well as I have a lot of like technical books, reading on enzymes and things like that. I don't know. I guess I kind of just follow what I'm curious about, which is kind of all over the place, which is maybe not that helpful of an answer. In terms of internships, I think if you're looking for internships, a lot of companies, especially in our stage, even though Perfect Day is 250 people, don't have an internship program. But one thing that can be really helpful is go on LinkedIn and look at all of the VPs there or C-levels. I think VP may be better, directors, and send them an email. Tell them that you're interested in an internship opportunity and why you'd like to work with them in particular. So I might suggest reaching out, this is a hypothetical, to like a VP of marketing and communications at a company and saying, here's my background, here's why I'm interested. Do you have any opportunities coming up that I could help out with?
Sometimes it can be hard to find an internship in this industry because this is still an early stage industry and there aren't a ton of companies that are offering internships. So if you're having trouble finding one, I would suggest, and you're an undergrad or at university, I would suggest finding research labs at your university that focus on research that's going to be relevant for cellular agriculture or cultivated meat. When I got started, there was nobody else working on this, and I was in academia. There was no cultivated meat or cellular agriculture labs. So I ended up joining a research group that was focused on skeletal muscle tissue engineering. And that really set me up for success later. It was a regenerative medicine lab. So if you can't find an internship, try currently existing labs at your university.
I'll add, insist that it be taught. I mean, this is and Jess is a perfect example of someone who had to make things work when there was literally no path, no playbook, no nothing. But now we've got David Block at UC Davis and Kaplan at Tufts, where there's centers for excellence now. So I think one of the things you can do is ask your teachers to teach it. Make this a thing that you want to learn, so that it becomes an actual field of study, which is very much is. So I think part of it is also insisting that it be taught. My PhD is in embryonic stem cell biology. I was one of the first people to get a PhD in this, and there was no course. So we had experts like the ones you're listening to today teach the courses. That's how you start a field. until people start getting their degrees in it and bringing those things, you know, and like Jess, for example, who's been around and now is an expert in this as well. Now we can have those people we can learn from them and create fields around it. So simply just asking and telling, like demanding that you want to be taught this would be my advice. And
Awesome.
plug for Jess's organization to be taught this by amazing human beings that she has curated and that can bring to you.
Thank you. And I actually have a GFI seminar coming up, so I'll add that on my LinkedIn. If anyone's interested in learning about cultivated meat science and product development, please check out my LinkedIn after this.
I'd love to go to that.
Me too. One last closing question, because I'm getting news that I think we're wrapping up this panel and moving on to something else. But if we can just go around the horn and just give one last piece of advice to aspiring entrepreneurs in this audience, those looking to join the startup space. Obviously, people are coming from a variety of backgrounds: undergrads, current professionals, food scientists, non-technical people. What's one piece of advice that you can give to these entrepreneurs to be as they navigate the emerging cell ag space?
Well, I'm happy to share there. I think my one piece of advice would be to just be a sponge. Just try to learn everything you can. And any ego you feel creeping up, just drop it, because you'll have better relationships with your colleagues, and you'll become infinitely more valuable, right? If you're a sponge and you just keep learning, and you'll have more fun. So I'd say be a sponge. It's okay. Like Eric said, to know nothing. Yeah, that's how you learn.
Yeah, I would just say that this whole industry, there are so many amazing, knowledgeable people. Talk to as many people as you can, and you will find your way. You'll see where you're going to fall, where you fit into this whole puzzle, and where your expertise or your knowledge will play an important role. So just talk to as many people as possible. Everyone from scientists to the leaders and the business leaders and so forth as well.
I would suggest also finding a co-founder who has complementary experiences to what you have to bring to the table, and really focus on building trust with that person. You two are going to be in it for the long haul, and there's going to be many challenges that come along the way, and you want to make sure you pick the right person. So make decisions with your gut, trust your gut, and you'll do great.
And my advice is towards a lot of the undergrads, people thinking there. I would just say my advice is focus your career on planting trees in which you will never know the shade. If you adopt a mentality that you may not see the benefit of anything you do, it frees your mind to explore the world around you and do good by the cosmos. And it doesn't feel the pressure to live day to day, but to focus on the long term and the benefit you might provide those you may never meet.
Wow. Well said. That's some deep wisdom there. I think a good place to end. Eric, Jess, Max, Angela, thank you all so much for just sharing your knowledge about this space with all of us. I think the next step is for everyone to go to the main stage. I believe that there's going to be an awards ceremony happening. So thank you all again. This was an awesome panel and really fun to moderate.
Thanks, Avery.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you.